Warfare and Gears of War, like even like 1 through 3, I didn't play the recent one. I heard it was kind of bad because it was just like more of the same, which is honestly Gears of War 1 between Gears of War 1 and 2, that was a pretty big jump, even though the basics were the exact same. And Gears of War 2 and 3 were still big jumps, even though the basics were the exact same, because they did enough and added enough to the point that the experiences were still different while still building off of the basic framework and still providing something that's, you know, somewhat new while still familiar. And it's just, people don't know how to balance that out, and it's why we have all these first-person shooters that are like, hey, this is a first-person shooter, and it's inherently good. We don't have to design the rest of the game. We're gonna go from here on out. Like, we have Unreal Engine 3, let's go with the basics and push a game, and we're good now. It's like, no, it's not that simple. If it was that simple, everybody would be a fucking millionaire by now.
Yeah.
Okay, I got some things to say.
Yep.
Which is one that I still have yet to tell my story.
Oh yeah. Well, you said something about interactions, and then you kind of.
Yeah. Ken Levine.
Yeah, Ken Levine. I want to say something real quick about like genre formulas, and I want to say that I think it's really interesting that in the West, the goal has been to use Call of Duty Modern Warfare's formula to emulate Call of Duty Modern Warfare. And I think it's interesting that in Japan, Dragon Quest formula was used to create thousands of different, well, not thousands, but like Mother, Final Fantasy, Breath of Fire, Saga, games that are fundamentally different.
Yeah.
And I might be oversimplifying the issue, but I mean, I'm sorry, I have to speak in defense of the genre whenever possible, because I think it's
when you really think about it,
I'm sure you're in the position of defense a lot. I'm sure you're the one constantly putting up the shield a lot.
Because
honestly, it's weird because it's like I think like that's kind of a thing that's kind of like I guess not resurfaced, but like surfaced recently in that like a lot of these genres have always been like really varied, but nowadays they're just not. Like even like back in the days,
JRPGs now are not.
First-person shooters, you can still like, oh, there's a difference between Doom and Quake.
Yep.
But you can't tell me the difference between Call of Duty and Battlefield, aside from the fact that Battlefield has a worse FPS.
Yeah.
Okay, so the other thing was, and maybe it's because those genres are still kind of young. I mean, if we look at, for example, like, I briefly wrote a history of JRPGs. I mean, literally, it was like just the most bare bones notes, but it was like between 1986 and 1990, and about 4 or 5 games were released in the genre on the NES, which were the first 3 Dragon Quest games and the first 2 Final Fantasy games. And really, if we're looking at, aside from Final Fantasy 2, most of those games are almost exactly the same. I mean, like, because the early Final Fantasy games were struggling for their own sense of identity, and the series didn't really find that until Final Fantasy 4, but that's a different story.
I feel like that's another like really important point though, because like back then, like plenty of RPGs were absolutely the same. The thing that gets me is that it seems to be like looping back into it. Like it's like they were the same, and then they were not,
and then they were the same.
Now they are again.
Yeah, but what
I guess
like
it was like, oh well, here's Doom, and now everything wants to be Doom, and now suddenly we have Doom, and then we have Quake, and then we have all this and then we have Strife, and then we have like all these other games, and then we have Red Faction.
There always gonna be
and then we have Halo, and then it just keeps on going like that. And now suddenly we're in a situation where, again, we're back to every first-person shooter is this certain formula. Like every first-person shooter is now Call of Duty, or every first-person shooter is now Battlefield.
Well, here's a question.
It's like the way that we got stuck into the genre in the first place is like resurfing itself, but in a new way. Like it's like the exact same thing is happening again, but now it's next gen, so it's even prettier to look at.
Well, here's a question. Does the Modern Warfare shooter to put it broadly, like, you can take a very low amount of damage and you die very quickly, but you also have regenerating health. Like, the kind of design paradigm that Modern Warfare introduced. I use paradigm a lot, and I'm really not sure how correctly I'm using it, but it sounds right.
It doesn't matter. It sounds good, that's what matters.
Yeah, so, like, the kind of design paradigm that Modern Warfare introduced. I guess my question is whether that subgenre of shooter will ever grow broad enough to where it can sprout wings and go in different artistic directions in the same way that the JRPG did.
What do you mean by subgenres of Modern Warfare?
I'm saying that Modern Warfare as a subgenre, as a type of shooter, as compared to because there's a comparison to be made where it's just like, oh, for fuck's sake, I'm trying to find Tantegel Castle. I'm still lost.
Are you still doing the whole walking around the world map?
No. I got to that part. I got the Roto token, and now I'm just
Okay.
trying to find a place where I can fucking sleep and restore my MP and all that good shit. Anyway, I guess the question is just like for example, if I'm talking about JRPGs, there were JRPGs, and then there's for example the I would call the Tales and the Star Ocean game. The Star Ocean games like their own subgenre because their battle systems revolve around something closer to real-time combat, but they still formulate themselves largely, and those two series became very different, of themselves, and they both sprouted off of, a framework that is still very much based off of what I'll call the super genre of the JRPG. So I guess the only statement I'm trying to make is that maybe not terribly likely, but just maybe, we're still in such an early phase of the development of what we might call the modern warfare subgenre that that we're still not seeing that kind of shooter go in different directions yet, and that maybe we just have to wait. I don't think it's very likely, but it might be possible.
So the thing I want to actually say there, and
I still have to tell my Ken Levine story.
Okay. Oh yeah. Do you still want to say it?
Ask your question first.
Well, I don't have a question. I have an answer. I wanted it. So.
Okay. Well, I mean, the Ken Levine thing is going to take us in a whole bunch of different directions. But you know what? I'll just go ahead and say your thing first because my Ken Levine thing is just Ken Levine being Ken Levine and then one of his fans interacting with me in a really good way.
Okay. Well, I mean, the thing I wanted to say about that is that. I already think that Modern Warfare isn't itself. I don't think Modern Warfare, I feel like Dragon Quest or, the JRPG super genre or games that define it are themselves big enough umbrellas that there can be things that exist under it. I don't think that's the case for Modern Warfare. And I think we often think of first-person shooters, but we never think of first-person games. This really irks me.
There you go.
This is the super genre. It is not for shooters in themselves are a sub part of a large umbrella of just the first person perspective and this understanding of space. And there are tons and tons of games that explore those things really well, but they don't exist in those space, in those spheres. They just don't. Oh shit, I'm super echoey right now. Okay,
that was my
okay.
fault.
Okay.
My headphone plugged out.
Oh, okay, yeah. So so that's in itself. So I think that's the first thing is that it needs to be thought about in the umbrella of first-person games, and when knowing that we realize that Modern Warfare in itself is actually a condensed subgenre. I don't know if you can get deeper than Modern Warfare in itself, and we know that because we see clones that don't really do much of it. I think we actually get out of Modern Warfare. I think we need to get a little more broad than Modern Warfare instead of moving within it. I think that's sort of the thing there.
I think
maybe just getting out of shooters in general, and just going first-person games. Honestly,
I think that's a great answer. I think that's a really great answer.
A lot of why I was in the initial hype of Mirror's Edge is because for me, Mirror's Edge reflected that exact kind of game. It was first person, but it wasn't a shooter. It was like shooting wasn't even a thing. It was you could disarm enemies that had guns, but you didn't shoot them. Yeah, even if you did, you could just toss away your gun. I don't fucking need this anymore. Let me just go run on buildings somewhere.
I love
that kind of stuff. Even if Mirror's Edge wasn't a great game, which I can't say if it was or not because I haven't played it, we need more games like Mirror's Edge. Because even if it wasn't a great game, it still did something different. And those different things that games do are what's so important to helping games form exactly what they are, because without different games in the past, we wouldn't have the games that we do today.
Yep. I think there are games that are pushing things like Mirror's Edge that they're just not existing in the same spaces. I think
they're not AAA games.
They're not AAA games, and they really can't be AAA games because, like we said before, AAA production prevents those from happening. Anytime a thing like a Mirror's Edge comes out, it's in despite of all the things that are just pushing against it. And I think that actually reflected in Mirror's Edge the game itself. Mirror's Edge, I think a lot of its flaws actually came from its need to be a traditional game.
Yep,
it need to be a traditional game because it needs to exist in the mainstream sphere. Mirror's Edge I just want to know, Mirror's Edge is super freaking important, man. That game is so influential, and you see its influence everywhere. It's so apparent. It's so weird to see constant games come out that they just clearly show their Mirror's Edge roots in it. It's so weird to see a game that very clearly has inspired a lot of people, but rarely in itself gets a lot of credit. Which is just it's so odd. I don't know.
Random.
There's a huge unsung an amazing amount of games like that that have basically formed the foundations of the games that we know and love, but we're just completely unaware of it. Like even like the Zelda games were like based off of not like the current like the really early Zelda games because they were like their own thing, but I would definitely say
Bathroom, be right back.
that I would definitely say that Zelda itself has definitely influenced a lot of other games that have taken the third person angle that it took and just like pushed the limit to like what it can do. I feel like Zelda itself could have like slightly influenced like the genre of like hack and slashes and like in general. Not like particularly, but like in the way that it introduced like 3D,
Yeah,
like in a way that most games just weren't doing at the time.
yeah. It's just like yeah. I'm trying to think because I'm trying to like when it comes to first-person games, it's like what is like the game that kind of started those things out. And it's hard to actually pinpoint it. It's actually really hard.
Is it
I'm
not
not
Portal?
particularly sure. I think it's because JRPGs are actually defined differently. JRPGs is actually defined by like a specific actual system, by the
Yeah.
structure of you know of like of
Yeah,
progression
it
structures and
it
such.
seems to
But
divide it more by like battle systems and like how
yeah,
you
so
go
so so,
through
so
rather than the game itself.
yeah, so these are concrete, you know, sort of, like cause effect stuff. But first person is just a perspective. That's all it is, right?
Yeah.
It's just this idea of how something looks. So that's a little weird thing because now that's really broad. And that can go in a lot of odd ways. You
Yeah,
know,
it's just
I
like
think it's
third
harder
person.
to pinpoint that, like third person too. You know, third person, 3D games in general, right? Which also provides this whole weird avenue, and the difference between 3D games and 2D games. Which is also like a really interesting and important split, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, yeah, like, jeez, games are weird.
Things are fucking weird.
So let's talk about Ken Levine some more because
Let's do it.
because
Yep.
we all know we want to do it. Okay,
I love talking about Ken Levine.
so
I
I'm
really-
just gonna be upfront about this, which is that honestly, you know, as much as I know I should probably feel different, I was ultimately kind of ambivalent about the Colbert thing.
I wouldn't
I
blame
have
you.
feelings about it. I don't. I so freaking indifferent to Colbert as a show. I have no idea what people see in that show that they feel the need to like jump to it. It's like
The
it's
thing
just.
about-
Well, that's
Colbert
I
is more-
enjoy his show. I'm just gonna say that. You know,
You what?
I enjoy his show. I've been watching. I've been watching
like,
it for
I'm sure
years.
It's kind of. It's hard for me to find as anything more than just kind of like flat.
Here's the problem with the Colbert Report thing, especially like everything that happened recently. Like, yes, absolutely, the tweet that happened was taken out of context for something else that Colbert was making fun of, and to an extent, to a very small extent, when you consider the context, it actually is kind of funny, but it doesn't excuse the fact that when you have something like that, and you just kind of say it out of context like that, no matter what, it's gonna get read incorrectly, especially on an avenue like Twitter when you only have 140 characters. If you want to make a joke like that, you basically have to respond to it immediately to make sure that the context is proper.
Yeah, that
Otherwise,
was-
it's going to immediately get read as a thing.
That's
And
what
while
I.
that
That's
is what happened. There was also a huge huge failure in communication with the people who are managing that account who actually
Yeah.
posted that.
yeah. That's
Yeah,
what I.
so-
That's what I said. Is that
That being said, Colbert himself has definitely done a lot of shit on his show like that definitely should not go like unnoticed, and it should definitely be talked about because especially with shows like the Colbert Report and the Daily Show, where they talk about news and they parody it, but they still present a certain angle to it. Like for the most part, like Jon Stewart's like whole angle is mostly
He
I
just-
guess
he
you
just
could say
condemns the whole thing.
liberalism,
what?
but like to the point where it's like Jon Stewart will critique dumb shit in politics while still offering a viewpoint. And because people see that, they take it 100% seriously and at face value, even more so than the news, which is why shows like The Daily Show and The Colbert Report are so important, is because they have this avenue for satire to the point where they can actually attract people who can understand political views, and instead they just throw transphobia and bigotry and all this horrible shit into it. And that's what really gets people. Not the fact that they're racist, but the fact that they do it with such huge influence that people will parody it. It's just like the conflicts that Dave Chappelle went through on his show.